Today we are diving into the core versus knots debate, a philosophical battle that makes Marvel's Civil War look like a friendly disagreement over pizza toppings.
Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to take complex stuff and, well, really distill it down into something genuinely insightful for you. And that clip, it really sets the stage perfectly for today. We're diving into the Bitcoin core versus knots discussion. Now, this isn't some kind of crisis for Bitcoin, not at all. It's actually a really fascinating look into how a decentralized system handles big ideas, big disagreements even. Think of it like a philosophical tug of war right at the heart of the network.
It really is fascinating, and what's so compelling, I think, is that this isn't about the network actually splitting or anything dramatic like that. It's more about two distinct implementations of Bitcoin node software. They fundamentally agree on the core rules, but they've sort of developed, let's call them creative differences on the details.
Creative differences, I like that.
Yeah. So our mission today really is to help you understand why this whole debate isn't just some, technical footnote. It's actually a powerful illustration of Bitcoin's robustness, its flexibility, and honestly, its maturity as a decentralized system. It really speaks to the strength of its design.
Okay. Robustness, flexibility, maturity, those are big words. Before we even get into the specifics of core versus knots, maybe you can unpack that a bit. How does Bitcoin achieve that inherent robustness in the first place? What's the foundation that makes it so resilient, even with these different software approaches?
That's a great question. So at its heart, Bitcoin doesn't depend on any single company or any central authority, right? Its strength comes from, well, thousands on thousands of computers all over the world. And each one is running what we call full node software.
Full node software.
Right. Think of these nodes as like independent auditors. They're constantly checking every single transaction, every block of information. They're basically Bitcoin's immune system. They make sure nobody's cheating, nobody's spending the same money twice, and that all the rules are being followed.
Exactly. This distributed vigilance, that's where the resilience comes from.
Okay, so thousands of independent auditors. How do they all stay on the same page? How does the network agree on what's valid and what's not?
That is precisely where Bitcoin Core comes in. Now, Bitcoin doesn't have official software per se. There's no CEO signing off on it. But Core has become what most people consider the reference implementation. Why? Because the vast majority of nodes run it. It's achieved this sort of, well, benevolent hegemony, you could call it.
Yeah.
Mostly through its track record. It's trusted, it's incredibly stable, and it just works really, really well.
And the philosophy behind it. You hear terms thrown around. Yeah, the philosophy is often described as aggressively boring. And look, when you're talking about securing hundreds of billions of dollars globally, boring is beautiful, right? Boring means stable, predictable, secure. Core has been battle-tested for over a decade by millions of users, thousands of developers contributing. It's solid.
Aggressively boring.
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah.
Especially for money. So this conservative approach, what does that look like in practice? They're not exactly racing to add flashy features, are they?
Exactly. Core developers prioritize stability and security above pretty much everything else. Here's an analogy. Imagine engineers building a massive bridge, one that millions of people will use every single day.
Okay.
Their main worry isn't winning design awards or using some brand new, untested material. No, they spend months, maybe longer, testing every single bolt, calculating every stress point, thinking about every single thing that could possibly go wrong.
Every worst case scenario.
Precisely. Their question isn't, can we do this? It's more like, what are the risks if we do this, and how do we absolutely minimize them? They want that bridge to stand strong for generations. That's the core mindset applied to software development.
That makes a lot of sense for stability. But, the flip side, does that caution ever slow things down too much? Especially in tech, things move fast. And how does this connect to rough consensus? That's a term we hear a lot.
That's a totally fair point, and yeah, that's where some of the tension comes in, this rough consensus mechanism that Core relies on. It basically means you don't need everyone to agree 100% on every tiny detail for a change to happen, but you do need a strong, broad majority to be comfortable with it. It prioritizes caution over speed. It's deliberately slow, deliberately meticulous.
So it's a feature, not a bug, in their view, a defense mechanism.
Absolutely. It's Bitcoin's built-in defense against, say, rapid, potentially destabilizing changes pushed by just a small group. It ensures anything significant gets thoroughly vetted, debated, and gets broad buy-in, even if that means new features take longer to roll out. It's all about protecting the network's integrity first.
Okay, so Core is the stable, cautious, consensus-driven standard. But like you said, not everyone wants to move at the pace of the most cautious person in the room.
Yeah.
What happens when someone looks at core and says, yeah, this is solid, but I think we can do better, maybe stick closer to the original ideas?
Right. And this is exactly where Bitcoin Knots enters the picture. It's maintained by Luke Dasher. He's a very well-respected, longtime Bitcoin contributor, and he genuinely feels that, well, certain aspects of the community's direction might have strayed a bit from what he sees as Bitcoin's fundamental principles or original vision.
So Knots is his alternative? How does it relate to core? Is it totally separate?
It's what we call a fork of Bitcoin Core, but, and this is important, it's not the kind of fork that splits the network or creates a new coin, not at all. Think of it more like taking a really popular open source project, like a web browser maybe, and creating a highly customized version. You keep the core engine, the essential parts, but you tweak it. You add features you think are important, maybe remove things you don't like, change default settings based on your own philosophy. That's kind of what Knots is to core.
Gotcha. So it builds on core but goes its own way on certain things.
Exactly. Knots includes additional features, different configuration options, stuff that core developers either decide against, put on the back burner indefinitely, or just never really considered, maybe because it didn't fit that aggressively boring mold. Knots really emphasizes what Luke Dasher considers principled adherence to Bitcoin's original vision. Sometimes that means being stricter on certain network policies than core. Other times it might mean enabling features that core views as perhaps too risky or experimental for the main release.
Okay, can you give a concrete example? How might Knots be stricter? That would help make it clear.
Sure. A good example is often how it handles the mempool, that's the waiting room for transactions before they get confirmed in a block. Knots might, by default, be more aggressive about dropping or rejecting transactions from its mempool if they have extremely low fees. It might see these as, well, network spam or just an inefficient use of resources.
Whereas core might hang on to them longer.
Core might be more lenient, yeah. It might keep those low-fee transactions around longer just in case network conditions change and they eventually become economical to confirm. Both approaches deal with transactions that are technically valid according to Bitcoin's fundamental rules. But Knots takes a more proactive, opinionated stance on what it considers optimal network health and resource use. That principled adherence in action, you see.
Interesting. So this principled stance, it sounds admirable, driven by a deep understanding, but could it also potentially lead to fragmentation or maybe seem a bit dogmatic to some in the wider community?
That's exactly the tension, yes. And it's a really important one. There's definitely a risk there. But it's also arguably a strength. The very fact that different implementations can exist, that they can compete on these philosophical points, that's actually core to Bitcoin's whole decentralized nature. It creates checks and balances. And look, connecting this back to the big picture, despite these detailed differences, core and Knots fundamentally agree on the stuff that really matters.
Like the absolute core rules.
Absolutely. First and foremost, both implementations follow Bitcoin's consensus rules perfectly. This is non-negotiable. It's not like they're creating two different Bitcoins. It's more like having two different very specialized calculator apps that both give you the exact same answer for 2 + 2. Whether you run core or Knots, you are participating in the exact same Bitcoin network, validating the exact same blocks, enforcing the exact same fundamental rules.
Okay, that's a crucial distinction. It's not about which one is right about the blockchain itself. It's about how they interact around it. So besides consensus, what else unites them?
Second thing, equally vital. Both core and Knots developers are absolutely obsessed with network security and censorship resistance. That's paramount for both. They share the same ultimate goal, making Bitcoin the most robust, the most unassailable monetary network possible. They're just optimizing slightly differently to get there. It's like maybe two elite cybersecurity firms. They have different methods, different tools, maybe different philosophies on threat detection, but they're both 100% dedicated to protecting the same valuable asset.
And the fact you can choose between them.
That choice is a feature, not a bug. It means Bitcoin isn't reliant on one single group of developers, one single code base. Think about traditional banking. If you hate your bank's app or their policies, what can you really do? Not much. With Bitcoin, you literally have the freedom to run different software based on different philosophies while still being part of the same global permissionless network. That's actually revolutionary from a freedom perspective, and resilience too. It's like a constant live stress test of different approaches.
Okay, this is where it gets really juicy, right? The philosophical gap. They play the same game, same rules, but very different strategies for how the game should be played or evolve. Let's talk governance philosophy, policy defaults, community trust. How do they differ there?
Right. This is the core of the debate, really. Governance first. Bitcoin Core, as we've sort of established, emphasizes that cautious consensus. Making changes is like planning a huge international conference. You need almost everyone, all the major stakeholders, to be comfortable with the plan before you move forward. Broad agreement is key. It often means slower, more incremental changes. The priority is avoiding conflict, maintaining unity across that huge user base. Minimize the risk of alienating anyone important.
And knots. How does their governance philosophy compare? Seems like it would be different.
It really stands in contrast. Knots, guided by Luke Dasher's vision, emphasizes principled enforcement. From this perspective, they're often more willing to implement something they believe is fundamentally correct or aligns better with Bitcoin's original design, even if it's not immediately popular with the majority. It's less about finding the lowest common denominator everyone can agree on, and more about sticking to a perceived ideal, even if it means forging ahead with maybe a smaller but more ideologically committed group.
So they're not necessarily waiting for that broad consensus if they think something is essential.
Exactly. If they believe a certain policy or feature is crucial for Bitcoin's long-term health or integrity, according to their principles, they might implement it much faster than Core would even consider. Core might debate something for years, Knots might just add it.
And that difference in governance, that naturally leads to different default policies, right? We talked about the mempool example. Any other areas where Knots defaults really stand out?
Yeah, it's a direct outcome. Beyond mempool stuff, Knots often has, say, more robust default settings for filtering network peers. It might be quicker to disconnect from or even ban other nodes that exhibit behavior it considers unusual or non-standard, even if Core might tolerate that behavior for longer.
Why do that?
The idea is to maintain a cleaner, maybe more secure set of network connections by default. You potentially sacrifice a little bit of connection breadth, maybe, for what you perceive as heightened security or network hygiene. Another area could be default limits on transaction relay, maybe stricter limits on transaction size or the complexity allowed in scripts. Again, the goal is pushing for what Knots sees like healthier network usage, guarding against potential denial of service issues, even subtle ones. It's not about changing Bitcoin's fundamental rules, remember. It's about the rules of engagement, how a node chooses to interact with the network.
Rules of engagement versus rules of the game. That's a really helpful distinction. Okay, this brings us to community trust. Core obviously has the advantage of being the default, the path of least resistance, lots of trust built up. How does Knots, with its smaller, maybe more passionate following, fit into that dynamic? What kind of tension does this whole situation create?
It creates a really beautiful and, I think, vital tension. Core strength is clearly its massive user base, its established trust, its stability. That makes it incredibly hard to attack or push through bad changes quickly.
Yeah.
But that very strength can be seen by Knots supporters as a potential weakness. Maybe it leads to groupthink. Maybe it makes Core slow to address problems that aren't popular but are arguably fundamentally important.
And the other side of the coin.
Conversely, Knots' strength is its principled independence. Its willingness to experiment, to enforce stricter policies, ensures that alternative visions for Bitcoin, maybe more idealistic ones, are kept alive, explored, maintained. But of course, that independence can look like fragmentation to Core supporters, or maybe introducing unnecessary complexity just for the sake of principle.
So it really sounds like this ongoing balancing act, pragmatism versus idealism, consensus versus conviction. It's not that one is inherently better than the other.
None at all.
But the whole ecosystem actually benefits from having both forces pushing and pulling against each other.
Precisely. This constant push and pull ensures Bitcoin doesn't just stagnate. Core provides that essential stability, the anchor. Knots acts as a kind of critical conscience, always pushing for adherence to principles, exploring stricter interpretations, keeping alternatives alive. This isn't just about lines of code, you know? It's about the sociology of this huge open source, decentralized movement. Different philosophies compete, and through that competition, the entire system becomes stronger, more hardened. It's resilience through diversity, really. Diversity of thought, diversity of implementation.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you, our listener, trying to make sense of these decentralized systems? Look, this isn't just some obscure tech spat. It's genuinely a living masterclass in how these networks handle disagreement, how they evolve. Think of Bitcoin Core as maybe the Toyota Camry of Bitcoin implementations. Incredibly reliable, meticulously engineered, trusted by millions, gets the job done day in, day out, the workhorse.
Yeah, that works.
And Bitcoin Knots. Maybe that's more like a custom-tuned sports car. Highly specialized, finely tuned, very opinionated about how it should perform. Fewer people drive it, but those who do are deeply committed to its specific design philosophy, its rigorous standards.
That's a good way to put it. And this debate, this tension between them, it really reflects something profoundly healthy in Bitcoin's ecosystem. It's this continuous, real-time balancing act between needing some standardization, but also valuing individual choice and principled alternatives. Both sides, honestly, in their own distinct ways, are actively making Bitcoin stronger, more resilient, more robust against different kinds of challenges. This isn't some problem that needs fixing. It's a feature. It should be celebrated.
So a final thought then.
Yeah, the next time someone tells you Bitcoin can't handle disagreement or that decentralized systems are just chaos, ungovernable, you can actually explain this. You can tell them how two different groups of brilliant people can have fundamentally different ideas about the best way to implement the software while still securing the exact same revolutionary network, following the exact same core rules. Because that dynamic, that robust internal debate, that diversity, that's not a bug. That is tangible proof that Bitcoin is working exactly as it was designed to. It's evolving through this constant decentralized peer review process.
Fantastic. And that wraps up our deep dive for today. We really hope you found these insights illuminating, and maybe you're walking away feeling a bit more clued in about this fascinating world of Bitcoin node implementations and that the beautiful tension within it all. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please do take a second to follow, like, and maybe share it with others who love to learn this stuff. You can also follow What Bitcoin Taught Me. For more insights, we're on Twitter, X, Nostra, Bluesky, Threads, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Find us there. Until next time, keep diving deep.